the big four, the likes of Deloitte, EY, even if I extend it to Accenture, Infosys. So these are all sort of consulting where you are really solving the problems by understanding and you're looking forward to it. Now there is a whole new area of consulting coming up, which is on the basis of data.
Hello, everyone. I welcome you all to our new podcast. I hope everyone's keeping well, you're safe, you're wearing your masks if you're going out, and you're going out only if necessary. So, today I welcome someone who is an ISB graduate. He's currently working as a manager, has been a consultant, and as a manager at Frog DNA. He's an ex worker at ZS and EY. So, let's welcome Mr. Nikhil Jain. Hi, Nikhil.
Hi, Ananya. Thank you for having
I
me over
hope
here.
you're well.
Yeah, yes, doing fine. Luckily, and I hope everyone is out there safe and sound. And as you said, keeping all the safety measures in.
Yeah. So thank you, Nikhil, for taking out time from your busy schedule. So let's get into it. But before getting into it, I am aware that you have a very interesting story to share. So can you just walk us through your journey, through your experience and your life experiences?
Yeah, certainly. So I think like whenever we hear about a startup, what we think about mostly is a product or it's a new service which is coming to the market for the first time. So the look and feel or the way we perceive a startup is very different. But the when we do a startup in a consulting space, that is something which is less heard of. So it is like amalgamating of two of the best worlds, which is consulting, about which we will talk more in detail, and startup. And that's where I've been luckily placed into for the last 1 year. So before I get more into it, I'll take a step back probably. So I have been born and brought up in Jaipur. I did my engineering from there only. My first job was with Futures First, which is a financial trading firm. After that, I got an interest into consulting and luckily got a break into Ernst & Young. Then I moved through different consulting companies, then to ZS and then to Prog DNA. In between, I did my master's as well with ISB. So overall, I think for the last 8 years, I've been associated with the consulting world, and I've consulted folks in the European region, in India, but mostly like I think almost 6 or 7 years out of 8 years in the US region, which has been primarily my client base. And for the last 1 year, I've been associated with a startup, which is again consulting in the US based clients only. But yes, the experience has been very different.
Great. So I believe the most interesting story is that you're doing consulting in a startup. So what's that like?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So that's very I'll say the hustle factor is really high. That's simply put it in that words. So basically, consulting in itself requires a lot of hustle. It requires a lot of focused thinking. But when you are into a startup, you are managing a lot of different things. The amount of responsibilities you have is much high. And the main thing is that the business exposure that you have, even for the folks who are there in our firm who are 1 or 2 years into the industry, their business exposure is very high. They are very close to the folks who are actually making the deals, who are actually getting the engagement signed, and they are all involved into the billing rate discussions. They know how much it is important to gain the business as well as keep the company profitable. So learning those things pretty early in your career, I'm pretty sure that's making a remarkable difference to everyone who is there out in the firm. Other than that, you are engaged in all other admin activities like just growing the people base. So when I started, we had less than 10 folks and we are 30 folks right now in a year. So we really hired all through the pandemic. And the way we did it, it's like there was no one size fit all solution. We went to campus, we designed our own case studies, which was non-conventional in a way, the consulting companies work, but that worked for us, given that we have lesser number of folks who can interview. So there are multiple things that you talk about, that you think about. We went for office hunting. We create our own new ways of celebrating our impact. So I think it's very different that ways.
Great to know about that. When the world was shutting down, you were hiring recruitments. So that is something great. So when did you think consulting? Why do you think consulting is best fit for you? And what was the point when you realized that yes, this is something that I want to do? this is what I want a person. Also, could you tell us about the qualities that one should have or one should try to acquire if they're trying to be a good consultant?
Correct. Okay. So let me break out your question into two parts. So the first one, when did I realize? Again, I think this is like a $1 million question. All of us ask us every day is to what do we have to do exactly? I think to me, luckily, it happened when I was at ZS. I think during my early days at ZS, I realized that consulting as a space, it was very enriching to me. So I think two things which really made a difference to me. Number one was the way I used to think about problems. So the main component or the main attribute that you need is an attitude of problem solving, and that was reflected not only in my work, but that was reflected in everything I used to do. So that made me realize that how powerful consulting as a domain is. And second is the way I used to interact with people, the way your interpersonal development happens in a consulting one, because you're required to interact with different type of stakeholders. It's not only limited to your team members. You have a whole array of clients, you have a whole array of vendors you might be talking to, you have your offshore onshore counterpart if you're working in a global setup. So there are multiple people you're talking to, and these involve senior leadership including the CXOs and VPs as well. So these interpersonal development and this interest which I had for problem solving really made my mind that I want to stick my career into consulting. Just building upon that as to what are the key things one should probably look for when if you're eyeing consulting as a domain. So I think number one is hard work, as everyone says, like that's the base for everything that you do, but you need to be more smart about it. Smart as in you should be able to draw parallels out there. Consulting gives you a business exposure across different industries. So you might be consulting a client in the pharma company, and then you might switch to an airlines company. But then how are you able to draw parallels, and how are you able to solve for a problem taking success stories from any other industry or any other company while using your own expertise? Because a problem might look similar, but a solution might be very different for a 20-year-old company compared to a launch company which might be only 1 year into commercial. So that's number one. Second is that you have to be really persistent about it. See, the way consultants or companies approach us, you have to solve real world business problems, and since these problems are already out there, solution is definitely not easy. So you have to really look for ways as to how you can actually solve for those problems. And more often than not, on a daily basis, you will be stuck with a lot of roadblocks. Like I like to call myself a firefighter, where I go through across multiple 3-4 projects of mine, and on a daily basis, when I start the day, I'm not really sure where there will be a fire burning up, and I'll just go and I have to fight it. So it's a daily phenomena. So that persistence and that hustle and can-do factor is pretty important. And third, and the most important, which probably you will not find in the textbooks, is to be very opinionated. In the industry out there and in general, people really value if you have a point of view. So generating that point of view, asking the questions, keeping yourself and everyone else at bay, like you are really asking the difficult questions and you are presenting your point of view, is very important. Like that is the sort of ingredients you need to make a good consultant.
Great. So here I am checking off the qualities of my list of how good consultant can I be. What do you think? Like, this is something that has intrigued me for quite some months because I was quite interested in what consulting would be like. So, what is a typical day in a consultant's life, according to you?
Okay, so I think consulting as a space is very different. So I'll probably talk about and I mostly live the place where I'm working for clients which are onshore. Onshore as in that they are based out of US or European region. So our days typically starts with a quick handover from our counterparts which are near to the client. So they just tell us that how has the client priorities changed during their day, because it's a very dynamic world out there. So on a daily basis, the client's priorities, the need, the ask, request change on a daily basis. So we just get a quick refresh as to how those has changed. So that's the start of my day, followed by a quick discussion on the task as to which team and which team member has to do what. Again, aligning with our long-term project commitments as well as short-term urgent client requests. Then most of the day spends on building models, on building deliverables, building decks, which is our bread and butter, and brainstorming sessions. And then probably towards the evening, probably around 6 or 7 o'clock is when the real hustle starts, because that is the time when we really start consolidating everything we need for client review. We really start looking at completeness of our deliverables. So that is when the real hustle starts, because our client calls start around 9ish. So then couple of hours when go into client presentations and meetings, and then if there are any urgent follow-ups, then we address it then and there. So consulting life is not that easy that ways. Like I typically start my day around 10 o'clock, and if I'm lucky I close it around 12. But yeah, 12 to 14 hours a day is what we are looking at. But the best part of my day is when we really like the brainstorming session with the team, because that's the point when we challenge each other, that how is one approach different than the other. And the second part is, again, as I mentioned before as well, when you present to senior client leadership. I think talking to VPs, talking to CXOs, it brings a totally different self of yourself.
Great. So I believe consulting does lead to a greater self-exposure and experience of the whole personality of oneself if they go into the field. So with that, what is your view of consulting in MBB versus Big Four versus ES? How was your experience working there?
Yeah. So that's a great question actually, and probably I'll just expand the landscape which you just highlighted. I think again, whenever people think, or like young or like students or people who are with who have just started their career, when they think about consulting, the first name that comes into the mind is McKinsey, and rightly so. Like McKinsey as an institution has produced highest number of CEOs in the Fortune 500. So there's a reason that why McKinsey is so popular. But McKinsey, BCG, Bain, the MBBs, they cater to a particular set of areas or a particular set of fields. So probably I'll just build upon it. To put it simply, the kind of consulting, like for every kind of problem, there are specialized people out there. Now, the problem, when they're very unstructured or which requires a lot of strategy, let's say if I want to revamp my whole business, or if my business, or if my company has business into 6 domains, I want to consolidate it into 4 domains. So, which are the 4 domains I should go into? So, when the problem is that unstructured or at that strategical level, over there, the MBBs are the clear leaders, where they help big industries, businesses, even the likes of top government agencies like Niti Aayog, all those agencies and organizations to come up with the strategy part. Second is when you have to actually implement those things on the ground, which requires large scale implementation, which requires a lot more consultants than only it requires a lot of people over there. So over there, the big four, the likes of Deloitte, EY, even if I extend it to Accenture, Infosys, all of these come into play. So these are all the sort of consulting where you are really solving the problems by understanding and you're looking forward to it. Now there is a whole new area of consulting coming up, which is on the basis of data. Now, what do I mean by data? So I will break it down further. So there is one primary research data, and then there is secondary data analysis. So primary data, by the sense, it means that you are collecting information firsthand, which can be, let's say, if I got a question that I have a, let's say, a big restaurant chain all over India, and I want to open one in Gurgaon. So which location should I enter into? So I'm doing a lot of primary research. I'm interviewing people. I'm doing surveys. I'm getting to know what the behavior of local resident is like, and wherever and at what place will I get the highest traction. So using that primary research, I come up with my own consulting. Alongside, there are also primary research syndicated reports where you are, let's of the like of Gartner's or Everest Group, where they create report like what is next in AI. So they just create what are the top 10 different things which are coming up in AI. Or if I want to create a data management system, what are the best technologies? How AWS is different than Azure? What is the industry tilting towards? So that's another type of consulting. Then there is whole secondary data analytics, which is really into data science, where you have like literally you have like billions of rows of data, millions and billions of rows of data, and you are figuring things out, you're drawing pattern out of it. Like let's say e-commerce for an example, or retail industry, you are really trying to see what is the stickiness of a consumer to the products I'm selling. How often do they revisit? How can I target the advertisements, or how can I target those things at an appropriate amount of time so that the visit rate is much higher. So that's completely based on and tracking the consumer behavior through data. So this is all the different type of consulting, and there are tons more, but I really wanted to inform everyone that consulting is not limited to a single space. Lastly comes niche consulting companies like Procdene, where I am right now, or ZS, where we do all of these. Like we do strategy, we do implementation, we do primary, and we do secondary data analysis. But we do it for more for a particular industry. So both ZS and Procdene, they are focused more on healthcare or life sciences as an industry. So it's like you create your own expertise in one or the other way. Is it either on a particular subject matter, or is it on a particular subject industry? So yeah, these are like all the different areas and in which consulting plays a role.
Great. And it's actually really great to hear that you had such an experience and you had such an opportunity to actually explore each and every sector of the consulting domain. So, can you throw some light on major experiences that you've had and which has shaped you into a better professional that you are today than you were like 5, 10 years ago?
Hmm. Experiences. Okay, so number one is the interaction that you have. So the interaction, and I touched upon it earlier as well, but you learn a lot from people. That's like how it is across each industry, I'm pretty sure, but the kind of touch points you have in consulting is very high. So you learn a lot from your mentors or your seniors, who actually help you understand how to approach problems, who help you understand how to develop business, who help you understand what are the industry trends looking like. Then there's a lot which your juniors teach you as well. They will ask you the questions which you never thought about. Those fresh set of eyes, they always bring a very new perspective. Then there are peers with whom you can actually brainstorm at a level where you feel like you have to, where there are challenging problems, you can share notes, you can share thoughts. So that's one aspect of it, which is more internal. Second is the business aspect. So clients. Sometimes when we are delivering projects, or when we are chasing deadlines, we become very transactional. So I have had experiences when I have hosted clients who are visiting from US to India, or when I have visited US multiple times. When you are sitting with the clients, you really understand that the kind of work you're doing has a lot of business impact. So you try to mold your business problem in a way that you're not being very transactional. You're not only just ticking off the different deliverables you have to think, but you're looking at the business implications as well. And that is the genesis of how consulting actually works. You understand their business problem, you solve for it, and then you create new business opportunities themselves. I think some of the greatest leaders I've seen in the industry are the ones who create opportunities at the right time. It's not like they find opportunities, they create opportunities. That how can you actually, if you understand that that a particular company is having some systematic issues, how do you create opportunities to implement something new altogether, which will be fruitful to the client, certainly. That's the end goal, but you are also increasing your own business. And off lately, what I've seen is that the interaction with the kind of interviews that I take for folks, that also enriches me a lot. Like I've taken, I think specifically in my startup experience for the last 1 year, I've taken 100 plus interviews, and I've learned so much through those interviews. Like it's quite delightful to know the way folks are really pushing themselves to learn new certification, to understand new things, keeping them paced up with the with where the industry is going. So yeah, so overall interaction as a broader category is one that is there. Second experience has been an attitude of taking initiatives. So, and it can be at various level. It can be at a level where you're trying to grow your own people and you are growing firms. So it can be it can be as small as that you are designing your own training program, and you are designing your own recruitment program, or you are just thinking of ways in which you can actually create more project managers, so that they are budding project managers who can handle more incoming work. So taking those new initiative is also very key. And I think in terms of experience, I think working with culturally diverse people, where you are interacting with US folks, European folks, you get an understanding as to how different culture works. So it's like you will always have a greeting with a like when you start with a US counterpart. So those things you imbibe in you, and these things make you a better professional.
Great to know that. So when you're going or you're preparing, if anybody is preparing out there for consulting interviews, so could you suggest like what are some of the resources that you would use if in order to prepare for consulting interviews and you'd like other people to know about it or they can take help from it?
Yeah, I think so. Like one of the first funda of consulting is that you should break down the problem into smaller parts. So if the problem you have is that how do I prepare, one of the smaller part is what are the different sections. So there is a different thought process you will need for solving the case, which is the most critical one. Then you will have to see how do you present yourself, because confidence, showing confidence and presenting yourself is a key requirement per se, like because ultimately you will be facing clients, you have to be very presentable. So that's part 2. Part 3 is solving unstructured or guesstimate problems. So think about each of these things. When you have to understand how do you present yourself, you should be very much aware as to what the target company is doing, what their business is, what their client is, and how you can mold your learnings. Let's say if I've learned 10 courses, there might be 2 courses which are more aligned to the kind of work the my target company is working. Let's say if they're consulting more to the fintech sector and I've done courses on finance, that might help more compared to if the target company is pharmaceutical and if I've done something on managing business complexity, something on those sort of courses, that might help more. So you mold yourself along the way. That's how you start to present it. For guesstimates, it's really developing a problem solving mindset. So it's like there's no easy solution to it. Like certainly you can surf the net and you can find different solution, but it's like the key thing is that the outcome is not as important as the approach. So how do you think about different guesstimates is very important. So you don't have to stick to one thing, but generally adapt to a problem solving attitude. In terms of resources, I think for case studies, like case in point was very helpful at an early point of time. It's still relevant in a base that it really encourages you to think differently, and it helps you understand that a particular case can also be broken down or categorized into different sections. But overall, I think you have to really solve different type of cases. You have to really develop that problem solving mindset too.
That's a great way to put it across. So what do you think on mentors in consulting and personally, do you have any mentors?
Yes, yeah. I'm lucky. I have few mentors who are like great industry leaders overall, and as I was saying earlier as well, I think what they really helps me think through is how to create opportunities. I think as you grow through a consulting space, so a typical consulting journey starts from being an associate or a junior consultant, then you move across the consulting ladder to a consultant, senior consultant, then you move to engagement manager type of role, and then you go to a partner level. So I think the starking difference between consulting and any other industry is the role evolution that you have. So I think if I draw parallel to even to our clients, so they are mostly trying to solve or they are working operationally or implementing few things on a particular area. But when you're growing through in a consulting space, at an analyst and an associate level, you really start to learn, you really start to see what kind of different business problems are. So over there, mentorship is really important for you to understand the kind of business problems you can have. When you grow to a consultant role, the mentorship that you look forward to is how can I actually manage client expectations? How can I deliver what is required of me? How can I, while managing my team of associate, how can I actually deliver the project? When you move to an engagement manager role, your business problem shifts. How do I make my project profitable? What are the finances that I have to look at? How can I create new business with the existing clients or get new clients altogether? At the same time, empowering my associate and consultants more. So the way I'm trying to track it is that at every level, the expectation from the job changes drastically, like every 6 months, and that's what I keep telling my juniors and my peers as well. That for at every 6 months, the expectation from you will be different totally. Therefore, the need of mentorship becomes all the more important, because at every juncture you need more support, you need more mentorship and coaching overall. So yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have good mentors along the way.
So that's great. And I have one last question for you. Being a college student from SRCC myself, I believe a lot of college kids out there might have the same question. What are your advices, or what tips would you like to give to students who are kind of interested, or they're thinking of pursuing their career in consulting, or people who are trying to shift their career into consulting?
Hmm. So my number one advice would be is, do not think consulting as an industry. Consulting is not an industry; it's a mindset. So you have to develop a mindset where you are approaching every problem with a solutioning approach. So whenever you see a problem, how quickly can you, like, keep yourself, take a deeper look at the problem, and how quickly can you push yourself to look for solutions. I think that is the base that you need to get into consulting as a space. There are, like, I think consulting gives you a lot of opportunities overall where you can really develop yourself as a professional. The growth is immense, like the opportunities, the kind of industry exposure, and not only one industry, like you can get into 10 industries multiplied by 10 companies, and that's like in 10 years you can really solve more than 100 business problems. So the way you develop yourself, the way your problem solving mindset is developed, that will take you to all the, like, to places you might not, you cannot even think of. Like, again, and just reiterating the point I made earlier, that McKinsey as an institution, or these institutions, they produces maximum CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies, and that's because being a CEO or being a leader in the industry, in any industry, the number one skill that you need to have is to solve any problem. So if you want to approach consulting, if you are fresh out of college, you are very new to your career, if you want to move into consulting, start developing the problem solving mindset.
That's a great way to put it across. Now I believe Sherlock Holmes can be one of the greatest consultants out there because he can literally solve any problems. With that, we come to end of our questionnaire for today. I hope you had good time with us, and thank you for taking out your time again. Thank you once again. I think I've learned more about consulting and how to approach career in consulting in this half an hour and 1 hour than I used to learn, or I can learn about it in a week. So this has been really helpful to me, for other people as well. With that, I would like to take your presence and let's just call it a day.
Thank you, Ananya. It was a
Thank you,
pleasure
Nikhil.
talking to you. Thank you.
Have a good day.